What's up, guys? Hope you're all still doing well. All right, I've got a couple more games to record here. One of them is with an old, tried and true standby stalwart, the mighty Omnath deck. This is a cool game I played actually back in June, but I was a little bit worried about the replay decaying as that's become a common thing, and I kind of wanted to get it recorded. So, without further ado, I'm going to just play. You guys are all familiar with this deck. Playing against this guy, Pokebroker. This is actually our third game that we played. And he kept upping the ante with regards to the seriousness of the decks that he was playing in. His Edgar Markov deck, by his own admission, was his strongest design. So he was eager to try it out against the Omnath deck because he had been right well crushed by the mighty green machine in the last two games. So he thought that Edgar Markov would give it a matchup. I wasn't really sure. Depends a lot on his draw, obviously. But the fact that I have a lot of creatures to oppose his guys that might be bigger gave me the impression that I might do well. And I drew into this hand, which at face value looks almost unplayable. It's got a 7, an 8, another 8. But it does have some key cards against what I expect from an Edgar Markov deck. One of the things about this deck is that it really needs to run a critical mass of vampires in order to be effective. And if you're running tons of vampires at 1 2 mana, you're not running a lot of removal and utility spells, which means that something like Arbor Elf is likely to live, and Sword of Feast and Famine is just an absolute bomb against Edgar Markov. Most of the vampires have black in the casting costs and the ability to block and attack unimpeded, and to get it on the commander is often decisive. So I decided to keep it, figuring worst case scenario, I can probably just pump a bunch of mana into Omnath over several turns using the sword, and then cast a big tooth and nail with Entwine, and that should seal up the game. We'll see how it goes. All right, looks like Pokebroker wins the die roll. Knight of the Ebon Legion. Back when Edgar Markov was running Roughshod, shortly after it was printed, running Roughshod over the 1v1 commander format, which was obviously a little different. They actually wound up banning it rightfully because it's completely busted in that format. The serious Edgar Markov decks were just so insane in terms of how fast they could build a board. And they pretty much just priced out, I don't know, a good 3/4 of the decks in the format by nature of just being simply too fast. I know that Nate was frequently frustrated by Edgar Markov, just how dominant it was. So I was glad to see it banned, and it was banned before they printed this absolutely insane vampire. You want to talk about power creep and 1-drops. This guy is absolutely insane, so strong. Just a nuts creature. The fact that it can, it's a 1/2 for 1, so already it's solid in terms of stats. The pump ability plus Death Touch, it's a 4/5 once you got 3 mana, and then it grows every single turn, whether or not you hit them specifically with the Knight of the Ebon Legion or just with your other guys. One of the best vampires ever printed. It might be the best, it's probably the best one-drop vampire ever made. Maybe that or the Stormcrypt Noble, the red 1/1 that grows every time you hit your opponent with it, but I'd say Knight of the Ebon Legion is probably better. Anyway, he's got 2 creatures in play on turn 1, so gotta keep pace with that. Bird's Paradise. Well, that will help a great deal. I'm going to play the birds first. Basically figuring if he does have removal, this is a slightly more less important target than the Arbor Elf because I have multiple wild growth effects. So the Arbor Elf actually sometimes makes 2 mana and don't want it to die. Already feeling behind, though. It's going to be kind of dependent on what kind of mana draw. And he plays Myriad Landscape, which I'm rather surprised to see, given how much this deck is dependent on its early drops. But I guess he's concerned about getting all 3 of his colors, so it does make some sense. He plays Vicious Conquistador. Not as good as Knight of the Ebon Legion, but making another vampire. I mean, look at this board. This is turn 2, and he's already got 4 power of vampires in play, which is enough to grow the Knight of the Ebon Legion to grotesque stats very quickly. He smashes me for 2. Notice I still have 40 life. I feel like there's a low chance that they'll ever revert this change, given that it's stuck around for so long. I thought actually the life totals went to 40 because it was done around the time that they released the 1v1 format. And I figured maybe if they're reverting everybody's starting life total to 40, that it might mean that they're doing away with the 1v1 format. But I think it's still around. It's obviously a failed experiment. Derogatory Speaker is an incredibly strong draw, though, not just because it makes 2 mana, but because it is a precious 1/2 creature if you level it up. So I'm going to level that thing up instead of playing Arbor Elf. That gives me a blocker, which actually shuts down pretty much his whole board. All he can do is attack with the 2 1/2s. If he doesn't want to lose his guys, provided he doesn't kill it. Remarkable how a 1/2 just moats down my opponent's offense. He's going to sack the Myriad Landscape, and that'll get him white mana. Double white, and he does in fact attack with those 2. That's okay. I can just block one and take one. Much better than taking 4. All right, a forest is really good too. I'm going to play my sword. And drawing the land there was critical because that actually allows me to not only play the sword, but equip it on the bird. He's an angry bird, and of course I'm going to attack, knock a card out of his hand, and untap 3 mana. Pretty disgusting. And he throws away a white vampire. Wow. It's really, really good 3-drop. He does have some non-token vampires, so this makes even additional vampires every single turn. But post-combat, I decide I'm just going to play Arbor Elf here and throw the sword onto it so that I've got a robust blocker that's pro-black and can prevent him entirely from attacking with anything. Just pretty delicious. And I figured there was a possibility that he might actually attack into this, not realizing that pro-black overrides Death Touch. And so he might waste his entire turn just charging the Knight of the Ebon Legion in. He sacks and gets a scrubland. And let's see what nastiness he's up to. He's really close to Edgar Markov now, which is very concerning to me. Obviously, one more turn, it gets out. And yeah, this thing is just completely nuts if it's able to attack. I only have the sword to block it. He decides to spend his turn casting Exquisite Blood, which is not a card that I would recommend in your Edgar Markov deck. On the scale of things that Edgar Markov is trying to achieve, this card is pretty low on the totem pole. You don't really need life gain. It doesn't really benefit you at all. And spending 5 mana for an effect that doesn't do anything, it's kind of nuts. And he's just sacking his vampires here, which makes no sense to me. I'm just going to kill one for free. He did gain 1 life. All right. This is being weird. It's jumping ahead. Okay, so I've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mana. Bunch of different choices. I can play Omnath and use Omnath to generate mana through the Arbor Elf. But the problem is that if you think about that, I tap these 2, I cast Omnath, and I attack with Arbor Elf, add 3, add 3. I have a big Omnath in play, but it's not quite backbreaking enough, and I'm really concerned about him getting Edgar Markov online. So with that in mind, I decided to do something which you don't see often too much, and I can't even think of the last time I did it, because it turns out that Tooth and Nail actually only costs 7. Everybody thinks of this as a 9 mana spell, because why wouldn't you entwine it? But you don't have to entwine it if you've drawn kind of 2 ideal targets anyway. So with that in mind, I'm just going to tap all my mana. I'll effectively tap the Arbor Elf, and I'm just going to cast Tooth and Nail without entwine. And that gets Terastodon and Vorinclex. Absolutely disgusting. Nukes down all but his white mana. And it goes to show you just how weak Exquisite Blood really is, that I'm just choosing to kill basic lands over a 5 mana enchantment. But now I've got Vorinclex and Terastodon in play against an army of elephants. And he's got a really good card, a Savai Triome, so at least he's got his colors back. But all he can really do is sort of anemically attack here, and I can take out 2 elephants. He does hit me for 4, so that's going to put a counter on the Knight of the Ebon Legion, but not a terribly big deal. And he gains some more life. Yep, there's the Knight up to 2/3. But he's got a whole bunch of problems to deal with. Top deck, Nissa, who shakes the world on top of Vorinclex of Hunger, Voice of Hunger, which is just totally insane. I start to tap my lands and then think better of it actually, and realize, you know what, I should just tap these creatures instead. So down comes Nissa. Tap for 6 green. Absolutely disgusting. Untap a land. And you'll see me burn off some mana right there, and actually, obviously, I didn't just go to my attack step with 4 mana in my pool. I cast Omnath as well. The game is bugging out at this point, but it's not terribly important. This allows me to smash in with this thing. And so that untaps. So to add mana in response, I add 3, and then all my lands untap. So Omnath currently, I think, has, I think after that I have 4 green mana floating. So Omnath is already a 5/5. And I just pass the turn back. Obviously, I was going to use the mana. And he draws a card. He thinks for a little bit and passes. Well, actually, this thing's coming in. And I'm pretty sure I moved the sword onto something else. I think I moved the sword onto Omnath. Yeah, it's actually, in fact, exactly what I did. I moved the sword onto Omnath. And you'll see me adding a shitload of mana to my mana pool here, up to 12, and blocking. And I remember he was puzzled by why my guy didn't die to Death Touch. Anyway, the replay is all screwed at this point. Regardless, I untapped here. And the sword was already on Omnath, and of course, all these got are black and green creatures. So Omnath cruised in. All these things tapped for 9 green. All these other things tapped, and Omnath just smashed him for about 26 or 27 in one turn and killed him. So anyway, I wanted to get this game recorded just because I thought it was kind of a cool little demonstration of some of Omnath's grooviness and the fact that you can cast Tooth and Nail for 7 mana and have it achieve quite a bit for you. You don't always have to entwine it. And Omnath did a very stalwart job of taking down Edgar Markov, despite the fact that my draw was rather slow and clunky. Hope you guys enjoyed that game. Short and succinct. I've got some better ones coming up. See you then.